Okay, Jason in Arlington, Virginia. Hey, Jason, you wanted to talk about the minimum wage?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, I just wanted to comment, if we do raise the minimum wage, we have to realize that the inflation numbers are not just going to go up a little bit, they'll skyrocket, right?
Well, let's see. 1938, when the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed.
No. If you raise wage...
Jason, let me finish my sentence. I'll give you a chance to rebut it. In 1938, when the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed, the minimum wage was first established, and it was set at 25 cents an hour. At that time, the prevailing wage was around 20 cents an hour. Since that 25-cent an hour minimum wage, it's gone up a whole bunch of times. I don't remember the exact number, but it's gone up a whole bunch of times. Can you identify for me, because it's now at $7.25 an hour, can you identify for me any year where raising the minimum wage produced a measurable increase in inflation?
Tom, I don't have a chart in front of me, but if you put raised wages, which are usually the largest cost in an object or a service...
Not true.
You will have inflation.
Wages are rarely the largest cost in a product or service, first of all.
Really?
And yes.
So let's take restaurant industry. Is it the food, or is it the labor going in to make the food?
Well, restaurants might be the exception that prove the rule, although I would guess that probably rent and electricity and, I've never run a restaurant, so I can't tell you, but I have run a lot of other businesses.
It's not 5%. It's not 5% of manufacturing costs.
But 9%. Okay.
As long as we
Shano used to run a restaurant. He says wages are 9% of costs, typically in the industry.
So there will be inflation.
Again, Jason, if there was any one year between 1938 and today when raising the minimum wage actually produced a measurable increase in inflation, every one of the conservative mentors that you have would have caused you to memorize that year. You'd be saying, you don't want to repeat what happened in 1962.
Tom, what's the minimum wage now?
$7.25.
Okay, and what do you say to raise it to get to the adjusted number?
Well, let's take it at least to $10.25 an hour, which is what it was in 1968.
Let's do that. The previous increases in these wages that you were talking about in the past were probably a smaller percentage than what you're proposing in terms of moving it to this $10.
Well, actually, by taking it to $10.25, because about half the states in the United States have a minimum wage that's in the $8 neighborhood, it's not going to be
so you've got a 25% increase in wages.
I don't think that. No, absolutely not. If you take all the wages paid in a state and you pull out of that of the percentage of the wages that are being paid at the minimum wage, it's probably under 10 or 15% of total wages. Not wage earners, but wages.
Look, you're not talking about raising it like 20 cents or 30 cents. We're talking dollars per hour here.
You're absolutely right.
20% increase.
You're absolutely right. But you've got in any given state, you've got people who are making $50,000 a year. You got people who are making $100,000 a year. You got people making $300,000 a year. You got people making $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year. When you average out all that wage income that's happening in that state, and then you pull out that small little slice of it that's the people who are just working at the minimum wage, even raising the minimum wage by $2 is not going to raise the total wages paid in that state by any kind of measurable amount, and that's why it has never produced inflation in the past.
Half the population and most of the job growth over the last 4 or 5 years have been low-wage jobs.
But that may be half the population, but that may be half the population, but it's not half the wages.
And that will cause inflation.
Jason, if you're going to do the math, you've got to use the right numbers. That's not half the wages.
What percentage of the population?
It's not. You're talking about population. I'm talking about wages. Okay,
so let's go through this. What percentage of the population makes less than 30% per year?
What is the average? What is the median income in the United States?
Probably $46,000 for households.
Yeah, per household, or $26,000 per individual.
And we know, Tom, that the number of new jobs being created are part-time. The majority of them part-time jobs or low-paying jobs. So when
that's correct, but only 3% of jobs in the United States are actually at the federal minimum wage.
So when we go forward, though, you're going to talk about raising prices. So you're going to go into McDonald's, and it'll be more expensive for a hamburger. You'll go and get these other services, and it'll be more expensive. Yes. It's an inflationary number. Just like we outsource stuff to other countries, that kept inflation checked. Now, look,
again, you cannot
don't do it, and
identify,
I'm not
Jason,
saying-
any year when raising the minimum wage has produced inflation, number one. And number two,
because the
let's
years
say
you're
it
citing,
does.
you
Let's say
never
you're
raised
right.
it by a large amount.
Let's say that you're right. Let's say you're absolutely right. I would still rather live in a country where the low end of the wage scale workers are making a reasonable wage and pay an extra 25 cents for a Big Mac than I would live in a country where wealthy people can buy Big Macs very cheap, so that, and again, the consequence of that is that the working poor are slammed in poverty that is just destructive of families.
And the majority of the people that buy McDonald's burgers, are they rich people or poor people?
I do not know.
Probably poor people. I don't see too many Mercedes.
Well,
McDonald's.
if you raise their wages, they'll be able to afford more McDonald's. Again, the cost of the burger is not 100% labor; it's 9% labor.
When we're dealing with these,
Center for American Progress did the math on this, Jason. You can go look at their website, thinkprogress.org. If you were to raise the minimum wage to $10.25 an hour, it would increase the cost of a Big Mac by about 50 cents.
And how much does a Big Mac cost?
I don't know. $2 and change. It's not a Big Mac.
Right, so let's say
$4. Let's say it's $4.
Okay. So 50 cents on that. The price has now gone up about 18%.
Okay.
All right. So that would be 18%.
And the wages have gone up how much?
McDonald's.
And the wages of the workers have gone up how much?
But we're talking about a smaller group relative to
Okay, so there's an 18% increase on the 9% of the total costs to McDonald's. Oh, okay, you're talking about the 18% cost on the increase of the cost of the burger. So the wages of the worker. So it's a wash. It's a wash for the guy making $7.25 an hour because his wages just went up 18% and the cost of his burger went up 18%, right?
When you keep citing this stuff from the past, remember the increases in the minimum wage from this 1930s. These weren't gigantic jumps in the amount of.
Some of them were quite significant.
From what time? What period to what period?
Well, just like you, I don't have the whole list in front of me. But again,
there we go. So don't pretend like it wasn't inflationary.
Jason, if you want to debate the minutia of the minimum wage, we should schedule it so both of us can have it printed out in front of us. But the fact of the matter is that I would like to, and you don't want to, and I think that we're both very clear on this. I would like to fundamentally reorder our economy so that we no longer have in this country the working poor.
That it won't be inflationary.
I think that we should be looking at Germany, we should be looking at Sweden, we should be looking at Norway, Denmark, Finland. They do not have the working poor in those countries. They have a reasonable minimum wage. We should do the same. Yes, there's going to be some economic dislocation as a consequence of it, but most of that economic dislocation is going to happen at the top, not the bottom.
But let's not pretend it won't be inflationary.
I don't think it's going to be inflationary in the general sense. No, I don't think so. If you're talking about if it's going to debase the currency,
minimum wage for So if we have a minimum wage for people harvesting our food or something like that, then won't that make the price of apples and peaches and stuff? Won't that make it more expensive because the labor is a big part of that, right?
I don't know what percentage of it is, but I would be surprised if it's more than 5 or 10%.
Well, that's why this whole part.
Transportation's a big part of it. We saw the oil companies double and triple the cost of the oil that's used to get the food to you. You saw an increase in food prices. It didn't bring down the republic.
Price of the purchasing power of the dollar gone down.
Purchasing power of the dollar has gone down for largely monetary policy reasons. It goes down, and it does all over the world because governments want to borrow money cheap or borrow money expensive and pay it back cheap. That's a whole different argument, Jason. Thanks for the call. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Jason's getting pretty good. Someday they're going to, Fox should be offering him a talk show. We'll be back 15 minutes before the hour.